Before the multiverse brought three Spider-Men together, Tobey Maguire and director Sam Raimi proved that a sincere, large-scale Spider-Man movie could work. This rebuilt chapter is not just a plot summary. It follows the casting, practical effects, visual effects breakthroughs, marketing changes after September 11, the difficult making of famous scenes, the canceled fourth film, and Tobey's return in No Way Home. Some images in the owner review version are posters or production photographs used for commentary. Their status is identified in the visual rights manifest, so Robert can request permission or replace anything before the public upload. Spider-Man spent years trapped in development before Sam Raimi's movie finally moved forward. One amusing prelude appeared around the first X-Men film. Stunt performer Scott Leva wore a Spider-Man costume for a joke take, announced that he was in the wrong movie, and ran away. The footage later appeared as a hidden feature on the X-Men DVD. It was not Tobey Maguire, it was not an accidental visit to the wrong set, and it was not part of either story's continuity. But it now feels like a playful handoff between the superhero era that was beginning and the blockbuster that would arrive in 2002. Raimi's key choice was to make Peter Parker emotionally believable before making him spectacular. Tobey Maguire played Peter as shy, burdened, and often uncomfortable in his own body. Kirsten Dunst brought warmth and frustration to Mary Jane. Willem Dafoe made Norman Osborn both threatening and wounded, and James Franco completed the friendship triangle. Raimi's horror background shaped the camera movement, the transformations, and the Green Goblin scenes, while the story treated grief and responsibility without embarrassment. That sincerity became the foundation for everything the trilogy did next. The first film mixed practical stunt work with computer-generated movement that was still unusually ambitious for the time. Visual effects supervisor John Dykstra helped design the city swinging shots, while Raimi described the movement as a kind of ballet in the sky. The production also made a major story change by giving Peter organic webbing rather than mechanical web shooters. Even the costumes became part of the behind-the-scenes story. Several Spider-Man suits were stolen from the studio during production and were not recovered until much later. The finished movie had to make a masked digital hero feel like the same vulnerable young man Tobey played in Close Up. A common retelling says Spider-Man was delayed from 2001 because of the September 11 attacks. The dates show something more precise. Columbia announced the move from November 2001 to May 2002 in September 2000 because production was starting later and needed more time. After the attacks, however, Sony recalled the teaser poster with the Twin Towers reflected in Spider-Man's eye and withdrew the teaser showing a helicopter caught in a web between the towers. Production histories also report that selected material was refilmed and a Twin Towers shot was removed. The release delay and the post-attack changes were two separate events. The cafeteria tray catch was not a simple digital trick. Production accounts say Tobey performed the catch with a prepared tray and the shot required 156 takes over roughly 16 hours. The upside-down kiss created the opposite problem. A scene that looked effortless was physically miserable. Kirsten Dunst later described freezing rain, while Tobey struggled to breathe because water ran into his nose and the lifted mask blocked part of his airway. Raimi had given Dunst a book of famous movie kisses because he wanted the moment to be special. The discomfort disappeared on screen, leaving two of the film's most remembered images. Before the sequel began, Tobey Maguire's back problems created real uncertainty. He had been working on Seabiscuit, and the studio evaluated whether he could safely handle another physically demanding Spider-Man production. Jake Gyllenhaal was discussed as a possible replacement while the situation was resolved. Maguire ultimately returned after being cleared, and Raimi even turned the anxiety into a joke when Peter lands badly and complains about his back. The episode is often exaggerated into a simple firing story, but the reliable version is that health, insurance, and schedule concerns briefly put the role in doubt. Spider-Man 2's Dr. Octopus still feels physical because Alfred Molina was often acting with real objects. The effects team built a wearable rig with 4 foam rubber tentacles, each roughly 8 feet long, connected to a corset and spine assembly. Teams of puppeteers rehearsed with Molina so the arms could seem like extensions of his body. Computer graphics expanded the movement when the tentacles carried him, fought at impossible speed, or traveled outside the limits of the practical rig. The design worked because the practical and digital versions were based on the same shapes and performance language. The elevated train battle blended location photography, a real train setup, stunt performers, miniatures, and digital work. Production used Chicago train cars and background photography, even though the finished sequence represents New York. The sequel also built more than 100 sets and locations, including Dr. Octopus's huge collapsed pier lair. In 2007, Spider-Man 2.1 restored additional footage for home video, giving fans a longer alternate cut rather than replacing the theatrical version. These details explain why the movie feels both intimate and enormous. Its emotional conflict is carried by carefully constructed physical spaces. Spider-Man 3 tried to resolve Peter and Harry's friendship, introduce Sandman, turn the black suit into an expression of Peter's pride and anger, and add Eddie Brock and Venom. Raimi later acknowledged that he never connected with Venom as naturally as he connected with some of the older villains. That does not make every problem the fault of one person or one studio note, but it helps explain why the film feels pulled in several directions. Its strongest idea remains forgiveness. Peter must recognize his own cruelty. Harry must choose who he wants to be, and Flint Marko is treated as more than a monster. Sandman required a different kind of visual effects performance. Artists studied how grains moved, built particle simulations, and combined digital work with Thomas Hayden Church's live-action performance. The transformation sequence is memorable because the technical display is organized around one small human objective, Flint trying to reach his daughter's locket. The black suit posed a different design problem. Instead of changing Spider-Man into a completely unfamiliar costume, the filmmakers darkened and altered the established suit so the audience would read it as Peter's identity becoming corrupted. Both choices use effects to externalize emotion rather than simply create spectacle. Spider-Man 4 was a real studio project, once planned for a 2011 release, but it never reached a final production form. John Malkovich was connected with the Vulture, Felicia Hardy ideas were explored, storyboards were created, and Bruce Campbell was expected to return in another cameo. The story kept changing. In January 2010, Sam Raimi withdrew because he did not believe he could solve the script and deliver the film on the required schedule. Sony chose a reboot instead of continuing without him. Development art shows possibilities, not a finished movie, so this section labels every abandoned idea carefully. Bruce Campbell's 3 Raimi cameos inspired a popular theory that he was secretly playing one character who would become Mysterio. The canceled 4th film made the rumor stronger. Campbell pushed back against claims that he had been formally offered the role, saying Raimi had never contacted him about it. Raimi later said Mysterio was among the possibilities for Campbell's planned appearance. Both statements can be true. The idea may have existed in development without becoming a final offer, contract, or major role. That distinction is exactly why this series separates confirmed production history from fan-friendly speculation. Tobey did not play Peter in another newly filmed feature for 14 years. No Way Home brought him back as an older, calmer Spider-Man whose purpose was to support Tom Holland's Peter rather than take over the movie. He helped develop cures, prevented Peter from killing Norman Osborn, survived being stabbed, and quietly showed what decades of responsibility might look like. The movie also let the 3 Spider-Men compare their histories, including the famous reaction to Tobey's organic webbing. Across the Spider-Verse later used brief archival Raimi footage, which extended his screen presence without being a new live-action performance. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man journey includes the Raimi Trilogy, the unfinished history of Spider-Man 4, his major return in No Way Home, and a brief archival appearance in Across the Spider-Verse. As of July 2006, another Tobey-led film has not been officially announced, so rumors should remain labeled as rumors. His legacy is already secure. The films prove that a superhero blockbuster could be awkward, romantic, frightening, funny, and emotionally sincere at the same time. This is part 1 of Kira World's 3-video event. Andrew Garfield is next, followed by Tom Holland, before Spider-Man. Brand New Day opens July 31, 2026.